As a general rule, I find it is unwise to listen to creatives talk about their own work. Honestly, nothing of value tends to be added, and in most cases, you're likely to come away more confused, not to mention losing respect for the people you once held in high regard. In most cases, works of art should stand on their own and speak for themselves. What they have to say then is discussed and debated by fans and audiences alike. But there are cases when a piece of media isn't art, when it doesn't speak for itself because it has nothing to say. In those cases, works are empty vessels for their creators and audiences to fill themselves with. And this is what has happened to Star Wars. Disney's Star Wars: The Acolyte has received mixed but mostly positive reactions from critics, while setting a new record low for audience scores. This rejection of the show by Star Wars fans, who recognize that it isn't Star Wars, is only matched by its acceptance by those who seek to use it to self-identify with. The Acolyte showrunner, Leslie Headland, has been running around to sympathetic news outlets giving interview after interview. Headland has repeatedly blamed fans for the show's troubles, while attempting to correct the record on what she believes critics have gotten wrong. But in all her explanations, Headland has only revealed how little she truly understands about Star Wars, particularly when it comes to the Jedi. Well, on second thought, that might be debatable. See, it's hard to know how much of these problems stems from ignorance and how much can be attributed to willful subversion, because part of me thinks that Headland does understand Star Wars lore and is seeking to change it, to realign the franchise with her own views and beliefs. Speaking to Fandom Wire, Headland explained that she set her story near the end of the High Republic era, in a rather undeveloped period of Star Wars history, so that she could tell a different story from a different perspective. She went so far as to say that the Jedi during the High Republic era were different. Quote, "Comparing it to anybody in the prequels, it's not the same. They're not the same Jedi." Now, there is a lot of focus on the Jedi in this show, and the discussion around it, because Jedi have always been the main standard bearers for Star Wars, and if you want to change the heart of this franchise, then you have to change the Jedi. To do this, Headland conflates the role the Jedi play with who they are as an order. While their activity during times of peace and prosperity may be different than in a time of war, the order of the Jedi, their ideals, their beliefs, and their values would not change. In The Acolyte, the Jedi are portrayed as little more than inept cops patrolling the galaxy to enforce the High Republic's rule. Now, the High Republic and the time period it exists in is a fairly new addition to Star Wars history and lore, created by a series of books, comics, and audio dramas from authors in the extended universe. The first reference to it appears in 2019, and a concerted effort to build out the High Republic began in 2021. With the novel The High Republic, Light of the Jedi, the various stories that follow tell how the High Republic controlled the galactic affairs of the central planets through a representative senate, while peace was kept by an independent order of Jedi. Then, the High Republic expanded its influence to the Outer Rim worlds, leading to the emergence of a terrorist group known as the Nihil, those who resisted the authority of the High Republic. During this conflict, the Jedi were drawn into a much more active role, leading to years of bloodshed and tragedy. Even here, the Jedi sought to protect peace and preserve balance. All of this conflict had only just died down a little before the time the Acolyte takes place in, when the Jedi have moved back to being more passive. Headland chose to interpret the Jedi in this time as a kind of law enforcement, intergalactic cops, enforcing the rule of the High Republic by keeping everyone in line. Thus, when read through her progressive lens, the Jedi are an institution of oppressive force. The High Republic, through the Jedi, fill the role that the Galactic Empire serves in the original trilogy.
Star Wars is always about rebels versus institutional threat, right? Underdogs versus huge empire, right?
And since the rebels are the good guys in the original movies, Headland's dark side characters, her Sith Light, are not coded as evil or villainous. They are merely in opposition to the space cops sticking their noses in where they don't belong.
We are concerned that you are training children. The Republic lost.
Brendok is not a part of the Republic.
I believe this is a gross misread on what the Jedi are in Star Wars. According to the classic lore, people become Jedi because they have a special connection to the Force. Through that connection, Jedi seek to help and serve others, mediating conflict while seeking balance. They don't use their abilities for their own benefit, but they also don't shy away from conflict when left with no other choice. For these reasons, they are seen as guardians of peace and stability. It's not that the Jedi are perfect or infallible, but even in times where they may be wrong, they are still in pursuit of these ideals. The enemies in Star Wars, those aligned with the dark side of the Force, are those who have been consumed by self-interest. They seek their own power at any cost.
Because to me, it's really about a compassionate person as opposed to a person that is consumed with self-interest.
Because of this elevation of self and power over the good of others, the dark side tends to be marked by violence and disorder, and thus the motivations and goals of these two groups make them antagonistic toward each other. Leslie Headland, in the content of her show and the interviews, prove that she does not see this as the defining makeup of the franchise. She's been very honest that the show reflects her and her worldview.
You know, like it feels so personal when you watch it.
And so the Acolyte does not carry the same message Star Wars does. Instead, it has the outer trappings of Star Wars, while it becomes an empty vessel for Headland to fill with herself. And so the Jedi are not selfless peacekeepers, but self-seeking enforcers of an oppressive power. By contrast, her Sith are morally superior, because they are more truthful about their desires and the use of their power. They are faithful to themselves. This is a basic point of morality and progressive ideology, where elective action for oneself is always better than compulsive behavior imposed by another, and this predictably leads to other associated problems. In the Acolyte, the seduction of the dark side isn't a temptation to use your power for yourself at the expense of others, but a sexual seduction of your own repressed desires, a challenge to traditional gender roles, the casting off of societal expectation for the sake of freedom.
What do you want?
Freedom.
The utter incompetence of the writing, the plot, the characters with any consistency, the lack of anything authentically Star Wars isn't a flaw of the Acolyte, because it's built into the show by design. The Acolyte isn't intended to tell you a Star Wars story. It's telling you a Leslie Headland story, and paradoxically proves Headland correct. These are not the Jedi you know. They're not Jedi at all. And that is why this show will fail. It does not have the heart that made the original so enduring. But this is all just one Rebel's opinion. If you appreciated this commentary, please leave a like. Subscribe to the channel so you'll always get the latest from Rebel Normal.